It's really starting to feel like this is never going to get better. I've made videos where I'm really peppy and enthusiastic to try to entertain people, even though I'm talking about gynecological chronic pain conditions, living with invisible disabilities, chronic illnesses, and I haven't even had it in me to pretend things are going real bad. You may or may not know I've been living with pudendal neuralgia since a surgery in September of 2020. That's pain along my groin essentially and interior to that on only my right side because a doctor crushed and stretched part of my clitoris during a medical procedure, and that has left me with permanent nerve pain. It is localized. It is not in my brain. If it was in my brain, then the 1,000 interventions targeted at my central nervous system and brain probably would have helped me even a little bit. It also would probably get worse with stress and move around and do all that other stuff. Instead, the only thing that affects it is direct provocation, like with sitting, which is most pudendal neuralgia patients, pressure, compression. It's a really horrifying medical condition, and if I had known that this would be my life, I probably would have unalived myself 15 years ago. Sorry, it's really that bad. I look normal. I look like young. I look healthy. I could walk. I could even dance despite the pain because actually being upright, standing and moving was the most beneficial physical position, and sitting of any kind, including reclining as I'm doing now, but especially sitting in any kind of a normal chair like a car chair, a movie theater, a restaurant, a desk chair, sitting directly, especially on my sit bone where the pudendal nerve passes very closely to the ischial tuberosity, which is your sit bone. It's like excruciating pain for me that only gets worse. It's like taking your wrist and sitting on your hand. Just the longer you're doing that, the worse it hurts. Well, that's what pudendal neuralgia is like for me. So I had that develop after almost 5 years of mostly remission from another 5 years of living with chronic pelvic pain. In those 5 years, I was mainly dealing with bladder pain and vulvodynia, vestibule pain. I also got PCOS and endometriosis diagnoses. Endometriosis was confirmed via laparoscopy. I had chronic sinus infections for 2 years. I had chronic migraines for 3 years. I had gallbladder dysfunction for 3 years. Now, it turned out that most of that was caused by the birth control pill and the hormonal suppression that I had been experiencing since age 15 when I was first put on the pill. So when I found that research in 2016, I got off the pill, my migraines and my gallbladder problems really kind of magically resolved themselves, because I had been on the high dose pill for 3 years to treat my PCOS diagnosis, which I didn't really have. The reason it seemed like I had PCOS is because my estrogen was so suppressed that the circulating testosterone I had, despite being abnormally low, was dominant over my low estradiol levels. So once I got off the pill and started doing local vaginal estradiol, estrogen replacement via vaginal cream, I also actually did use some herbs for a while. And I used some other things to try to normalize my hormones, and that worked. And I had had sinus surgery to recover from the years of infection. So when you have dryness, which hormone suppression, testosterone increases sebum. That's why in puberty, you got the greasy skin, the pimples, the oily hair. Well, I had extremely low testosterone for over 15 years. Because of the birth control pill. That is a known side effect of the pill. It also increases sex hormone binding globulin, a blood protein that binds to sex hormones. So I had, and still have, but especially was way worse then, really dry mucous membranes. The mucous membranes of the body, like the nasal passages, the mouth, I think the eyes, definitely the vagina, they have lots of hormone receptors. So does the bladder. The bladder has tons of estrogen receptors, testosterone receptors in the vulva. When you add hormones to these locations, they, become moist like they're supposed to be. And that moisture, just like in your mouth, you have dry mouth, you're more susceptible to cavities. You get more cavities, you get more bacteria. Same thing with dry eyes, more irritation, dry nostrils. Well, that was happening everywhere. So I was not officially diagnosed with Sjogren's because I was negative for the lip biopsy, but I tested positive for the level of dryness in my eyes and mouth. So that's Sika syndrome. I don't know if I would have the antibodies now for it. Sometimes that can develop later, but I definitely had the level of dryness consistent with Sjogren's level dryness without even having that official autoimmune disease, probably simply from hormone suppression and the dryness that caused. which I think also made me susceptible to pathogens, to bacteria getting in my nose and mouth and eyes, giving me I had frequent pharyngitis, throat infections, sinusitis, colds. I also had frequent UTIs and frequent yeast infections. So all of that got better in 2016 when I found the research by cross-referencing my different medical conditions, all of various medical conditions, chronic illnesses that I had with low hormones and the birth control pill. I was doing searches in PubMed and finding medical journal articles confirming this. I couldn't find a single doctor that I was seeing, which was like 12 different doctors at Stanford, to agree with me, to agree with what their colleagues published in medical journal articles or the biomedical explanations that I was finding that made complete sense. And even, aligned with the testing that we had, like my blood work, hormone levels. I had, an IgA test once that was, it wasn't 0, so it didn't qualify as a deficiency condition, but it was extremely way low, below normal. So I got all of this stuff better from 2016 to 2020. And then one UTI, because I never got testosterone replacement back then. No one would give it to me, and I just gave up. I just cut my losses when I was like, I can pretty much live an almost normal life now. I still have some suprapubic bladder pain and symptoms, but I'm not peeing 40 times a day. I'm not waking up all night. I'm not having bladder spasms. I'm not having migraines. Like, I got so much better that I just was like, I want to go live my life. And I did. I lived an amazing life for 4.5 years. Then COVID happened. I got a UTI. They wouldn't give me a proper culture and swab. I took multiple antibiotics of different kinds to try to get over it. Then I got a severe yeast infection. Again, they wouldn't swab it. They just gave me clotrimazole cream. And that wasn't enough because it was actually a rare yeast. I don't know how I got Candida parapsilosis, but I did. It wasn't albicans. And so no azole antifungals worked for the next year. I had to get on oral nystatin for months to kick it, like I recently posted. But that flared up my vestibulodynia so bad that I thought, you know what? I'm going to get this taken care of once and for all. I'm going to go down and see that vulvovaginal expert in San Diego whose research I read that changed my life and see if he can prescribe me testosterone, if that will help me. And I made a half-hour-long video talking about all the things that went wrong, that were done wrong, inaccurate, big mistakes at that clinic. I'm very sorry to say, no one is sorrier than me to say that doctor really fucked me over and ruined my life. The best way was in the procedure in which I was inadequately anesthetized, and they had to have a nurse come and pin me down to keep my legs open because I was in so much excruciating pain. Now, I've since had that clitoral lysis procedure with 0 pain because I was properly anesthetized. But in my first lysis, I was not anesthetized enough. It was excruciatingly painful. They had to bring in a second, third person to the room to kind of keep things visible. And something happened. I think that I could see from photos they're using their thumb to retract on my frenulum, which is a very innervated part of the body. It's stretched back 90 degrees in one of the photos that I have of the procedure. And afterwards, it was swollen 3 times the size of the left side. It was extremely painful. I had burning sensations coming from it. I still do to this day. I had the skin bubbled up and turned red, and it stayed that way for almost a year until I had some of it excised, but they didn't excise the whole thing. And I thought maybe I had a neuroma for years. I tried every other thing in the meantime to try to get better. Every single nerve drug you can imagine, every centralized pain syndrome treatment, holistic therapy modality you can imagine, trying to avoid, because no one would help me with this. The doctor who injured me, I stopped talking to him when he started telling me that I was having this pain because of a annular bulge at L5S1, which is a small disc bulge that I'd had show up on MRIs when I was like 18. So I'd never, ever had clitoral pain or pudendal neuralgia symptoms in all my years of different medical problems. This was a completely new issue, and this doctor was totally gaslighting me. How could he help me solve the problem if he was lying about what the problem might be? And like I should have spine surgery instead of address the 3 times swollen, red, painful area that was directly impacted by a specific surgery after which the pain began. So I've been living with that issue. It's incurable at this point. I really thought that I could beat it. It seems like it's like never gonna happen. This is my life now. And I tried to lean into what I could do, which was still be upright and dance, even because I couldn't sit anymore. Like right now, all my weight is on my left-hand side and I'm reclining fully, and it still hurts. And then at least I found dance. And dance was partner dancing, swing dancing was like my saving grace. And then my knees started to hurt, and I ignored that for as long as I could. And I finally sought medical attention. And here I am at the year mark. and I've gotten nowhere. And I even now know what the problem probably is, and no one will help me with it. I'm getting completely shut out, just like with every other medical problem I've ever had.